Hey Ethan, I got your Blues Junior limited edition here on the bench. We're going to take a look and see why it's distorting at lower volumes on the clean channel when it should not be doing that. So we'll take a look. So a quick first inspection. This is the special edition, or sorry, the limited edition. So it's got the Jensen speaker in it, which is nice. Tweed covering. This appears to be one of the older ones. It's the reverb tank is dated 2011, so I assume it's somewhere around there. And this is one of the older yellow board models. So this board was super chintzy and is difficult to work on, so I'll just have to take a look and to be extra careful with it. It's got the Illinois, the gray Illinois capacitors, which are notorious for going bad. So those will definitely have to be replaced. But you know, more importantly, we're going to see if we can narrow down what exactly is causing that distorted signal coming through at those lower volumes. There was an attempted self-repair here, and I'll have to take a look at that and see if there was any board damage, but we can potentially fix that, or there are replacement boards for these tube socket boards. And then I believe there was another issue with one of the reverb, either the jack for the reverb wire, or there was something going on there, so I'll take a look and we'll figure that out too. So I put the tubes on the bias meter, and what I found out is that this left-hand tube is not drawing any current at all. There's no plate voltage here, and I think that is from the repair that was attempted here on these two pins. I gotta go in there and remove that solder and see if I can repair that more effectively and get plate voltage on there and see if I can get that tube to start drawing. So that means that this right hand tube was the only one that was functioning, which would explain why it was getting more distorted. And if these traces are somehow messed up and we can't, you know, figure out a good way to repair that, then I'll have to look into a replacement board for this. And again, I'm going to replace these Illinois capacitors, these gray ones, because they are either going bad or will definitely go bad. There's some kind of blob of solder here on this diode, which is D6. I'm not sure what that was from. Some attempted repair from up top. So that I'll have to look at that and see what's going on there, and you know, most likely replace that diode and repair the trace if the trace is bad underneath. And then we'll check the bias and make the bias adjustment. I did notice that there's some darkening on the tubes. So you can see how the tube label is kind of burned up, and then you can see some darkening here. I'm not sure if that's just because of the paper label that's on the EL84 from Tube Amp Doctor. My guess is, knowing the Blues Juniors, that this thing is probably running hot. So definitely check the bias, and it'll check the power tubes, and we may have to put in a different set of tubes, but hopefully not. We'll take a look. So one last thing I wanted to point out to you, and it's kind of hard to see because I don't have my lighting set up very well yet, but this is the input jack. If you look back here, I've got the plug in, and this is loose and wiggly, and this plastic housing on the jack is not super tight together. I don't like that, so I'll probably just wire in a standard Switchcraft metal jack in there. We'll get rid of that and make this so that it's reliable. Okay, so I removed the solder from those joints, and sure enough, the pin 7 on this V5 EL84, the pad is gone, and so the solder wasn't actually making connection with anything. It was kind of holding the pin in, but there was no connection to the trace next to it, and that should ring out with continuity, just like the one next to it here. When I touch it to the board connection, it beeps, but when I come in here and I get the other end of the diode that it's connected to, I got nothing. Sorry, my hand's in the way. So I'm going to attempt a repair on that. I see if I can scrape away and expose some of that trace, and see if we can lay some solder down and make some sort of connection, and see if that works. All right, give it a try. Well, one thing I want to do while I have this board out is replace these screen grid resistors and get those elevated up off the board to avoid any future heat damage. This is a source of heat damage because there's so much current going through here. Unfortunately, I don't have those in stock, so I'm going to have to order them. But I'm going to try and do everything else and get as much of this done as possible, and in the meantime I'll get those ordered. Okay, I'm just finishing up here. I'm going to put the board back in place, and then we'll try to bend these ribbon cables very carefully so that they don't break, which is why I'm taking my time with this. I just want to get them down just enough for me to be able to sneak the pot shafts past the lip of the chassis. Alright, so the new filter caps are here, and those are nice F&T brand filter caps. Those should never ever go bad in the life of this amp. I went ahead and I replaced the two diodes here on the low voltage supply. One of them had a big blob of solder on it. I'm not sure what that was from. It didn't look like it really affected anything, but it was getting really close to this lead on the second one. So I just went ahead and replaced them both. So I've got the bias supply resistor, the voltage divider for the bias circuit, and I've set this at 22K, which should give us the correct voltage for the EL84s. And then I've also left it elevated off the board in case, later on we need to parallel another resistor in there. It'll be really easy to wrap the leads around that and parallel those. I replaced the 100 ohm screen grid resistors with 2 watt metal films, and I elevated those off the board just to be safe and keep a potential heat damage point from occurring right there. So I just went ahead and replaced those as well. And then the final thing is that I took out the input jack and I'm putting in a regular metal frame switchcraft, and this will be much more reliable. This cheap plastic jack that Fender puts in here is really terrible, and it was already loose, and it's kind of starting to come apart, which they're notorious for doing. And if they don't come apart, then they break the shaft. The shaft breaks right here. So this will be much better, much more reliable. So let me get this back together and let's fire it up and see what happens. So I've got the board back in and hooked up. But one last thing before I fire this up and we start doing some testing. I took the speaker cable out, this molded plastic speaker cable with these quick connects on the speaker. I'm replacing this with a hand-wired switchcraft plug with some hookup wire, and I'll solder that directly to the speaker. These things are terrible, and they're a major failure point. I had one that failed just sitting in my living room, a personal lamp, just sitting in my living room, it failed. So once again, Fender used the cheapest possible component that they could get away with, and they failed.